Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. If you are joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Cameron Coutts, industrial psychologist and founder. Cameron, thanks so much for joining me today.
Always, thank you very much for having me.
Let's jump straight into the questions. Tell us your story, where do you come from, and even outside of work, who is Cameron Coutts?
Cool. So yeah, I'm Cameron. I'm an organizational psychologist, as it says right on the screen there. So I grew up in Johannesburg and then shipped myself off to Cape Town, to UCT to go study. I'm one of the very lucky few people in the world, especially with young people, that you go to school and then at the end of school, everyone's like, "What do you want to do for the rest of your life?" And everyone's like, "I have no idea." I was in that same boat as well, but I'm one of the very lucky ones that, like, the moment I started actually studying my degree, I was like, "This is what I want to do with the rest of my life." And that was business science and organizational psychology. So yeah, I did that at Cape Town. I spent about 10 years there. Obviously went through that. Between honors and masters, I took a year off to go traveling and backpacking by myself, which was a really cool experience. Then did masters, had my own identity crisis at that time. So I kind of walk the talk as a psychologist in terms of experiencing the downsides of psychology. But yeah, I really kind of discovered who it is that I was and am and what I wanted to pursue. Went and worked in corporate for a while, lots of HR system implementation, as well as organizational redesign, change management, sustainability. Then found myself in the kind of startup world, also around change management and innovation. And then, yeah, serendipitously met my business partner and started our business about helping entrepreneurs take the chaos out of scaling theirs. Who I am outside of work, interesting mixed bag, very obviously people-centric. I mean, what psychologist isn't? But I also, at the same time, I balance that with being a gamer. I mean, if you look to the side there, I've got my PS5 and TV sitting in my study. That's a bit about me personally, but yeah, how'd I do with the introduction?
Perfect. For those of us who don't know, what does an organizational psychologist actually do? Because I mean, you said business science, and I was like, yes, a lot of the guys who do accounting do business science, and then people do something like, no, but that's not what you did. So tell us, please.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So look, let's separate the organizational and the psychologist components. Right. Psychologist first and foremost is our role as healthcare practitioners is to improve and optimize the health and well-being of people. Right. That's the simplest way that I can explain what psychologists do. Obviously, the health and well-being element is not through medicine and medical spheres, but obviously through psychological well-being. As an organizational psychologist, and I prefer that term to industrials, the fact that we look at the health and well-being of organizations as a whole as well as individuals. So in other words, another way of looking at this on the one side is I can improve and predict people's performance at the workplace on an individual level or team level, but I also make organizations more effective and healthier places to be, whether that's through culture, whether that's through systems, design, strategy, etc. It's about how can we take this whole and make it as effective as possible through its people and its culture and its systems. That's the simplest way I'd explain it.
Okay. Now let's jump into the main topic of this discussion, or the thing that I want to focus on, and that's burnout. It's that time of the year. People are tired. I'm tired. They're just trying to get through to December. Some of them are just trying to get through to December holidays, to feel burnt out. Is that normal?
Yes, because if we look at what burnout is essentially it's a syndrome rather than an illness that's caused through chronic stress. And the reason why it's so insidious is because people that are burnt out will acknowledge that they're burnt out, but still do nothing about it. And some people won't notice it either. So again, a point around the chronic stress, it's not about like these extremely traumatic or acute events that'll happen to your life where you like have this super stressful event at work. It's just about the fact that you've gone for so long without really taking a proper rest. and you're starting to just deplete those resources over time. So now, given the fact that we are, at the end of October, I like to give this metaphor of marathon runners. Why is it that they run a marathon and just 100 meters away from the finish line, they start falling over? Why wasn't it like a couple kilometers before? It's because you can see the finish line, right? You can already imagine the fact that you're going to be resting, and you then realize how exhausted you actually are. So same thing in relation to where we're at in the time of the year now, is that, look, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say burnout is normal in terms of, like, it wouldn't be a syndrome if it was, but I think this is a normal time of the year to be experiencing burnout if you have not taken any deliberate breaks or rests throughout the year up until this point.
Okay. And how do we, so clearly trying to fix it in October is way too late, but how do we prevent things like burnout and long before it happens? What can we put in place to avoid things like this?
Sure. So, look, would it help if I explained what burnout is firstly, and then I'll kind of go into the preventative aspects, right? So I defined what it was, but I mean, how do you identify what it is and what the experience is? So burnout consists of three main factors, and these are all, like, it's a Venn diagram, they're interconnected. So it's emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and lack of personal accomplishment. So the first one is essentially, it's the difference between being tired and being drained, right? You finish a day feeling tired, that's normal. You finish a day feeling drained, that's not normal. You wake up feeling drained, you're burnt out. In terms of depersonalization, you start becoming a bit cynical and you stop caring, right? You no longer, like, identify with what you're doing, the people that you're working with, whether it's your colleagues, your clients, anything like that. Is if you stop caring about the quality of your work and almost the impact that you have on people, another sign. And then lack of personal accomplishment is, like, no matter what I'm doing, I feel like I'm not really getting anywhere. I'm not accomplishing anything. Like, I'm doing the same stuff, but, like, where's this going? And it kind of links that exhaustion, not caring point. But even further than that is you feel less capable than you usually are. It's like I can't concentrate as well, can't do this. And it's all very, like, especially that one, those are all valid things, because at that point when you're burnt out, you aren't as performing or as effective. So look, those are the, like, factors. There's a lot of symptoms, and burnout does lead to things like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, etc. Okay, but now to go back to answer your question around prevention. Look, one of the main ones is, especially now in this post-COVID era, is just workload. The biggest problem is that most of us are overworked, and in order to be able to prevent going to burnout is ensuring that do people have realistic workloads. There's two ways of looking at that. That's kind of got to do with quantity and complexity. So it's like, as in terms of how much work they're getting, is it realistic for one person to handle this? And then the other side of complexity is about the fact that the reality is that if the job is really complex, and you don't have the kind of skills, experience, or capability to do it, you're a lot more likely to burn out because of the strain that you're taking. So in order to prevent that, ensure that people have got enough capacity in their job, and to make sure that they're in the right job in the first place in terms of what they're skilled for. Other ways to prevent it in terms of personal health and well-being, like as an individual, is ensuring that you're doing all the things that we should do, that also doctors tell us. Getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, drinking enough water, making sure you've got the right nutrition, mindfulness and meditation. Like, this isn't news. We know this stuff. The problem is when you start becoming burnt out, it becomes harder to engage in those activities as well, right? So it's about, like, it's the consistency and the patterns really make the difference. I mean, human beings, like, work very well off of routine, so having those things in place are really critical. So I've mentioned workload, I've mentioned personal health and well-being, and taking care of that. The other thing, and probably most critical, is just support, right? And I don't even mean like active support, it's perceived support. If I believe that I have support structures around me, if I believe I can go to my supervisor and I've got the trust there to actually approach them if I'm struggling, that already helps prevent burnout. Because that trust is there, is because a big part of burnout is just you're taking strain and stress for too long. Having support is about the fact that, do I trust people enough to be able to lean on them when I'm taking strain? And just the genuine belief that we do has a huge impact on how much we're able to cope with stress. So yeah, I think those are the three main things that I would say around preventing burnout. There's many others, but I'd say if you do those three things properly, that's 80% of it.
For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. I want to ask you a little bit about mental health days or mental wellness days. They're a reasonably fairly new thing. Myself, like I've been pushing my team, like if to take them. So like make sure you take them, make sure you feel. And I've been pushing them, but then avoiding taking them myself. But then until last week, I just had to. Like I needed to take a mental health day. But obviously at that stage, it was quite late. So what are your thoughts on those mental wellness days in terms of helping things like burnout?
I'll link it to sick days, right? And even in other spheres. So, okay, in context, in my business, we've got a policy that once every quarter you take a long weekend, right? It's like that's compulsory. Just because the fact that you need to refresh yourself, and when anyone's taken a break, they come back and it's like my thinking is so much clearer, my motivation drive is back. So it just makes perfect sense to be proactive about that from putting that system in place. But the other side around mental health days, I think those are perfectly valid and perfectly fine. I mean, the reason why I link this to sick leave is because there's this stigma around sick leave. I saw this one meme. It was like, well, what feels illegal but isn't illegal? It's like taking sick leave when you actually need it. And I think that's the point. Is we've all heard about burnout culture and this very like overly productive world or rat race that we live in, and this is a direct symptom of it. So having a sick day or sick leave, it can often just be preventative, right? And I don't see why that's a problem, especially within the mental health arena. It's like I'm taking sick leave proactively to ensure that I don't take 7 sick days in like 3 months from now. And I think that's just a smarter thing to go around. I think the biggest problem around that has actually got to do with kind of culture and leadership, not accepting and reinforcing these things. But I'm a full advocate of them. And again, prevention is always better than cure.
If for the young professional out there, there's a lot of companies or larger companies that have, or not a lot, there are companies that have, let's say, toxic work environments or high expectations that can't be met, as an example. For young professionals who are maybe looking for jobs and going on interviews, what do you think would be potential like red flags that they need to look out for in employers that can indicate that this is a place that chances are I'm going to get burnt out if I go to that job? Tricky question, but any thoughts would help.
No, of course. I mean, tricky question because of just 2 domains. It's kind of like, what are and it's simple. It's about workplace expectations and meaning. Human beings have got an unbelievable tolerance to suffering if we derive meaning from what it is that we're doing. I mean, like, I don't know if that's a direct quote from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, but it's pretty much in there. So that's the one thing. If we really like, almost workload becomes a less relevant topic if we really care about the purpose and mission of the company that we're working for. Like if we really believe in this and we're really doing it, working extra hours is because I want to, not because I feel like I have to. So I think that's a fundamental starting point, is asking you the question is like, am I like, would I be willing before even starting to go above and beyond because I care about the company? Or am I going above and beyond because I'm trying to make myself look good to my superiors? Because if it's the latter, you're very likely going to lead to burnout because you're not doing it for meaningful reasons. The reality is about being in the workplace. There's always going to be times where you need to work later hours or work weekends. It's just like part of it. The ideal is that you are in a company that is almost reciprocal to that. And either acknowledges it, gives you overtime, or gives you time back, or recognizes you and thanks you. But look, in terms of like the easiest way is obviously just chatting to people that work there already, right? Look, chat to your peers. What's it like? That's the easiest bit of information that you can get. Besides that, the other things is looking for toxic traits is like when they ask you in the interview is like, are you willing to work late hours? Then it's like I think that's a basic expectation for most professionals. But the fact that you're asking me that in the interview process or in the application process is a really like dangerous sign that you're going to be overworked. So yeah, I'd say it's essentially the meaning component. To look for something that you find meaningful, and it's also in relation to who your direct manager is that's going to be interviewing you. If you feel like you've got a good relationship with them and you feel like you can resonate with them, that's also going to help a lot. And also just pay attention to what it is that they seem to value and reinforce. So if they're saying is like, this is a place where you hard workers shine, etc., then that's it's a red flag. I'm not saying it's like don't drop and go, but just keep your eyes open.
That's good advice. I've got a few other questions, but there are some questions coming in from the audience, so I rather want to switch over to that. Got a question from Bryn who says, should we be emotionally attached to our position or our career?
Position, probably not. Career, yes. A huge part of our identity is the way that we perceive ourselves in terms of the contribution that we make to community, society, and what we do as professionals and within our careers. So if I had to almost invert the question as like saying, should we not be emotionally attached? I'd say that that's not really possible. According to your position as well, because it's a part of your career, I think it's a hard thing to expect of yourself to not be attached, because then you almost become cynical. You're doing this as a coping mechanism in order to not care. I think human beings, we want to care. We want to really care and be emotionally attached to what it is that we're doing. And if we feel like we can't, that's actually more of a coping mechanism than anything else. And if you feel like you can't be emotionally attached to your position in your career, it's probably a sign that you should probably reconsider your position in your career.
Great one.
And thanks for the question.
Another interesting question. What's your opinion regarding the 4-day week?
Look, big advocates. I'm a big fan of a 1-day week or a no-day week. No, but jokes aside, I think it's really great. Everyone, like, given our 5-day weeks right now, is that we start a weekend, and by the time you feel a little bit rested, you're back at work. So if I had to go back to like the burnouts and get a bit technical here, it's the ability to replenish the resources that you have expended in that time. That's why if you don't take a holiday over like 10 months up until October, that's why you start getting burnt out. My hypothesis, again, because I haven't really read the research, if we had 4-day work weeks, that would help, because it would allow us more time to recuperate. But outside of the topic of burnout and stress, people just learn to be more productive with 4-day work weeks, right? They're more motivated. And again, this links to that point, because they arrive with more energy, they arrive with more resources, and they're more willing to do this because they don't feel like they're fighting over their time afterwards, right? They've got the time that they need for their own personal lives, so they're more willing to give the time necessary to their jobs on those 4 days. So I'm a big fan. In terms of how practically it's going to roll out, I'm not sure. It depends on the business, depends on their operations, depends on their customers' schedules as well, because that's a big challenge.
Oh, agreed. Any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
The main simple one about burnout and stress is the fact that it's I'm going to reinforce the fact that it's less acute, it's more chronic, right? It really is this very insidious thing that sits in the corner behind you, and you don't realize how burnt out you are until you take a 2-week holiday and really feel rested after day 10. And then you actually remind yourself of like, oh my God, this is how I actually feel on a normal basis. So the main thing I can say there is just be very deliberate about your breaks. I think we tend to be very protective over our leave days and our time, and we try to protect as much of that for the end of the year so we can take an extended holiday. I buy into that as well, and because it gives you a lot of time to do things that you want, but be very intentional about taking breaks in between, just for the sake of consistency in your own health.
Appreciate it. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by latest tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Cameron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of 2 Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.